Hello, and welcome to the Steve and Mark Discuss podcast, where Steve brings up a subject to discuss. He says a bit about it, and I respond. So, over to Steve.
Hi, people. So here we go. Yesterday, there was a NATO meeting in Warsaw, in Poland, and in which the Dutch defence minister, called Kasia Ollongren, said that supplying weapons to the Ukraine is an economical way of defending NATO against Russia. Quote, supporting Kiev is a very cheap way to make sure that Russia, with this regime, is not a threat to the NATO alliance. And she admitted that NATO had skin in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So this to me, what she said was wrong on so many levels.
Mm-hmm.
Because basically what she's saying is that the life of a Ukrainian soldier, the costs, it's like getting your soldiers from the bargain basement of a supermarket, or a department store.
Yeah.
You go into the cheapest possible way, and I'm sure that the people in Ukraine are going to be offended. It's a very offensive thing to say. That we're letting these people do our dirty work for us on the cheap. And but let's go on. The EU so far has sent 85 billion euros to Ukraine. The US officially has sent 75 billion dollars to Ukraine, according to the article that I was reading. One interesting aspect of this is that one of the consulting firms, there's a consulting firm that is advising Kiev how to spend the money that it receives from the US. And one of the consulting firms has links to Antony Blinken. Antony Blinken is the US defense spokesman, at the least in the US. So he has an interest, he has a vested interest of keeping the money flowing. Because if this consulting company lobbies the US, they get like their 10% or 20% of their money goes to Ukraine before it even gets there.
Yeah.
If they are advising Ukraine how to spend that money wisely so that Ukraine can get more, they're going to get another 10% just by speaking to Ukraine, saying, you should do this, you should do that, and leave it to us. We'll get, you give us 10%, and then I digress.
Yeah.
What really rattled my cage is the fact this lady said, that we're getting this job done, and she said, is to make sure that Russia, with this regime, is not a threat to the NATO alliance. Russia has never invaded a NATO country. When NATO was formed, not one time has Russia invaded.
No.
They've rattled each other's cages, Russia and the United States, and and the nuclear missile crisis that had back in the 80s, I think it was.
Yeah.
But other than that, the Russia hasn't touched a NATO country. So I don't know what this lady, if anybody knows where Russia has tried to invade a NATO country, let me know. You write in the comments underneath this video. But I can't think of any time.
Well,
I can't think of any time.
The whole thing about NATO was that, it was in opposition to Russia, and it was understood. And it's not as a big secret about Russia, but the agreement was that NATO stopped here, Russia had there, and filled a buffer in between. Okay, we're now talking about using people as well. The issues going on here is the justification for the war going on, and Putin has probably got problems justified it in his own in Russia as well. Let's remember that. I know, it's an international thing. It has become a hot war. It's not just a cold war anymore. It's become a hot war. Whichever way you want to do it, there's people dying on the ground, which is the point you've made. Yeah, there's families in Ukraine being affected. There's families in Russia being affected. And this is it. And I don't care if they're Russian or Ukrainian. These guys are out there. From something, as we said the other week, a couple of weeks ago, they should be getting around the table and talking now, because it's just getting ridiculous. Well, it's ridiculous. It wasn't exactly sensible to begin with, but yes, it's getting to a point of ridiculousness now. We don't know what's going on the ground. I was reading a report in Portuguese yesterday, funny enough, about cynic. This is appearing on MSN, Microsoft News portal, which draws from all those different places. That people are looking at it and thinking, well, we're sending all this money to Ukraine, and it's not getting any results. Ukraine might be holding Russia at best. And we keep coming back to this. Why isn't the war over yet? With all the equipment and everything else that's been sent there, and the money. Forget the equipment. A lot of it's probably scrap. Some of it is test equipment, or they're testing out things. Probably both sides are. Why are Russia still operating there if it's so successful? Again, it's almost as if, yes, justifying what's going on, justifying the money that's been spent, justifying the tactics, which there doesn't appear to be any, quite frankly. Yeah.
Coming out today,
Yeah.
Although it's nothing new
Yeah.
when we're talking about soldiers in battle, but coming out today is that Ukrainian soldiers are taking performance-enhancing drugs like methamphetamine,
We'll stay away.
to make them resistant to pain, and to the cold. And I knew a guy in the UK who was a Green Beret, and he said, when they were doing their stuff, the snorting cocaine was not frowned upon, because it made them more active.
Yeah.
It made them more active, and to keep them awake for days on end.
Yeah.
And some of these Ukrainian soldiers, when they get caught by the Russians are saying that it takes them about a week to come down. From their highs.
Yeah. It is an issue. I don't know about the British Army taking drugs. You've heard it.
Yeah. Well, unless the guy was lying to me, but there's no reason to lie.
No. I mean, they do. I mean, I come from an industry where we're subject to drug and alcohol testing, and on a random process as well. Let alone suspicion, and I was never under suspicion, not my head. But it was tested a few times, even randomly. But that was part of a 10% check. I think the military operate the same thing. It is overlooking it. I mean, it is hard conditions, even in their home territory. Most of them must know they're in a no-win situation from both sides. Effectively, there seems to be stalemate. Where do we go from here? My mates are dying.
As I see it, Russia.
Yeah.
They just want the Donbass.
Yeah.
And they want the part at the bottom, which name escaped my mind.
Crimea, Donbass.
Crimea. And so they aren't going any further. They won't go any further west.
No, but
they dug in, just defending these two regions.
Well, the report I was reading yesterday. I mean, again, we don't know. I don't know how they analyse it, and independent analysts will say different things.
Of course.
But they were saying that the problems is the Ukrainians do have is they're too sparsely segregated from each other when they do an offensive to actually be effective. So, as you say, all the Russians need to do is to dig in, defend, defend, which gives you the upper hand. If you're the defender, you got the upper hand. And
Yeah,
Russia,
I read.
yeah,
Sorry, go on.
yeah. I mean, and Russia probably overall probably have the better logistics now. They've probably got logistics lines set up. I don't know. I mean, we don't know what's happening on the ground.
Yeah, yeah. I was saying. I was going to say. I was reading that the Ukrainians are now being advancing on foot
Mm,
in small groups,
yes, yeah.
and of course, what the argument against that tactic
Mm,
is that if you're going on foot
mm,
in small groups, you're limited
mm,
as to how much ammunition you can carry.
yeah.
That's the first thing. How much water you can carry.
Mm,
Because what I mean to say is how much supplies
yeah.
you can carry
Yeah.
to 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 maintain
Mm,
your attack,
mm,
maintain your, and of course the Russians, they're getting, like I said in another podcast, up until now 10,000 Ukrainian soldiers
mm,
have surrendered.
yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me in these small groups when they run out of ammunition, run out of
Yeah.
water, run out of food, and run out of hope.
Mm,
That's when they start to get on the radio and say, "All right, we're going to hand ourselves in." That's how I see.
yeah. You got it.
That's how I see it working its way out.
I mean, yeah. Small groups are always guerrilla warfare type situations where you go and you attack a small convoy or something. You take them out and then out again. I mean, yeah. If you've ever read Bravo 20 by Nab or other books of similar nature, when I grew up, it was all the vogue to read these things. Um, yeah. So if you're doing an all-out assault, you do need you do need equipment and numbers. The Romans knew this. I study a lot about ancient battles tactics, um, and yeah, in Boudicca's time, when she was going around quite happily just storming things and all that, yeah, she had a big army, but they were used to a guerrilla type thing, go and strike the Romans, get them from the back, and everything else. When it became to an all out assault, yeah, she had the big army, the and I can imagine this being the case if the Russians will be the meat grinding, the meat grinders, and that's what the Romans were. They were able to meat grind, so they went in the final battle, bang, 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 and even then, I can imagine this being the same situation here. If you're going to go into it, we all know that tanks now are probably so yesterday with the counter um, countermeasures you can take against a tank. It's like the Russians now started to put the cage on top of the turret because the Western weapons were double tap, blow a hole in the front in the metal, then go in and the next bit explodes inside. The Russians sussed this one out and then put a sacrificial thing on the top to take the impact. It's a so tanks are really yesterday. What is the
It's
solution?
coming to the stage where the rains are coming and the tanks are going to be useless
Well, that's
anyway.
it. Yeah, yeah. So,
They can't. It's all marshy. Where the Ukrainians are,
mm,
it's all marshy. That's one of the reasons why they were going in small groups
yeah,
on foot,
yeah. I mean,
because the vehicles couldn't advance any
no,
further.
no. It's a very very difficult war. I mean, they've got home advantage and they're struggling. Um, I mean, it's always been a problem area. Them holding on to it anyway, traditionally. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it is going to. I think it is now getting time to start saying, well, we've got to start talking. There's going to be bitterness. There's going to be bitterness for generations to come. I mean,
Yeah, well,
but there's not a lot you can do about that now. That's going to be there anyway. If the Russians, so like, if the Ukrainians drive them back, what do the Ukrainians do next? They're still going to have a neighbour who's pretty angry. Um, if if Russia do take over the Ukrainians, how are they going to keep their population there? I don't mean on the bottom part. If they do manage to actually do encroach upon the rest of the Ukraine, or
I don't think Russia's got any interest
they
in
can't
going
do it.
into.
That has never been the objective. Well,
No,
as far as I understand it, but it's a yeah, it's now got to I think a stalemate. It's just not Ukraine. As she's saying, well, it's us really. We're keeping Ukraine alive. We're the oxygen. They're just the body. Yeah, and I think there's a lot being said from the Western side, and we've got to be honest about this. It's almost like, well, they're trying to sell it, do anything to sell it now.
yeah.
In the US, big questions being asked. I mean, the US saying, well, it's not our war, it's not our problem, it's another European land dispute going on.
Since Kevin McCarthy was ousted as Speaker of the
Yeah,
House, any further negotiation with the White House as to send money to Ukraine
yeah,
has disappeared.
yeah,
And so this last continued resolution
mm.
of the budget didn't include money going to
There
Ukraine,
isn't any money to go.
and they were wanting to do
Yeah,
that. They wanted to do that now,
yeah,
you know, as we, you know. But then McCarthy he got ousted, and so that's not. There's no more money from the US legally
mm.
going to
Well,
Ukraine, no matter what Biden wants to
well,
do.
no, but
You can't.
but
You can't do
Biden's
it.
had it until the elections, one way or another, I reckon. But it's but again, that's an internal now American issue. But yeah, Ukrainians.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, basically, it's not the Ukrainians are stuffed. NATO stuffed with that because
But it's interesting because what happens in the
yeah,
US has an
yeah, of
influence.
course, yeah, but yeah,
What happens internally in the US has an influence on a lot of the rest of the
well, yeah.
world.
Well, America sneezes and the rest of the world catches a cold. Yeah,
It gets a
yeah,
cold. Right, there you are.
but yeah, but at the moment, um, yeah, I mean, there are no results coming from the Ukraine, and as you said, it's weird that you got this consultancy. I mean, yeah, I've got to be careful. I've worked in consultancy. That's used to say, give me your watch, and I'll tell you the time. I'm sure the
That's right.
Ukrainians are very, very capable of working out what they've got to spend the money on. If I was in the US, I would be very well. It's possibly a US appointed consultancy that are probably an auditor checking it. So
It's got links to the Anthony Blinken. It's got Anthony Blinken.
well,
That it's
you
his.
sound
They are his
well,
chums. He had links.
you sound
He used to be part of the consultancy
well, you
company.
sound surprised. I mean, you sound surprised.
No, I'm surprised that they opened up about it.
Well, they've got no choice. They've been found out. You know what's the best way to be?
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
there
yeah.
you are.
Oh, yeah. But we needed to do this because we needed to get something in place very, very quickly. You know, so it seemed like the best
Yeah, yeah,
option.
of course, of course, of
Yeah,
course, of course,
yeah.
of course.
Anyway,
Yeah, politics is a very dirty game.
well.
Very dirty.